She was just a girl. No father, no mother, no one. Leah grew up forgotten by the world, and by the people who were supposed to love her. Since she was 5, she'd lived under her aunt and uncle's roof. But it was never a home. She was seen as a burden, a mistake left behind by a sister who'd left this world too soon. Her days were long, gray, silent. By 12, she had learned to cook. By 14, she was caring for children who weren't hers. And at 19, she was sold, like livestock, as if her body was the only thing that had any worth. The man who bought her, or rather, the one who took her as his wife, was someone Leah had never even seen before. A name, a last name, a distant shadow wrapped in rumors and silence. Alexander Wolf, a millionaire, a recluse, and much older than her. Some said he was a monster. Others said he was just dangerous. But Leah had no choice. And on that gray morning, wearing a cheap dress and with her eyes locked to the floor, she left with a suitcase in one hand and a lump in her throat. The black car that picked her up didn't have an engine. It had an omen. And as the road swallowed the horizon, Leah had no idea she wasn't just heading toward a new house, but toward a new life. Or the end of it. The mansion appeared before her like a nightmare frozen in time. Tall, dark, imposing. The windows looked like eyes watching her. The hallways seemed to hold secrets within their walls. The driver stopped in front of a pair of carved wooden doors. "Miss Leah, we've arrived." No one waited with flowers or smiles. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a stern-looking woman, who she would later learn was the housekeeper. No words, no welcome, just a nod. As Leah stepped through the grand foyer, the air felt different, colder, heavier, as if the house carried memories that refused to die. Inside, everything was silence. Luxurious furniture covered with white sheets, heavy curtains that blocked out the light, and a staircase so tall it seemed to lead out of reality. It wasn't until hours later that she saw Alexander for the first time. He stood with his back to her, in front of a lit fireplace, a glass in his hand, shoulders bent under the weight of something Leah couldn't yet understand. When he turned around, time seemed to freeze. Gray hair, strong features, eyes that were deep and dark. He wasn't unattractive, but he was cold as the house itself. "So you're the one," he said flatly. "Your room is upstairs, on the right." That was it. Pain she strangely wanted to heal, and the strangest part was that in silence he seemed to want to be healed too. The days that followed their agreement were strangely peaceful. Slowly, Leah began to move freely through the mansion. The east wing remained locked, but other doors started to open, including Alexander's. They began dining together, first in silence, then in small phrases, and soon in long conversations about books, music, and faded memories. Alexander didn't laugh much, but when he did, he looked younger. Leah, who had never truly belonged anywhere, began to feel part of something. Something new, something warm and hard to explain. One night, she heard him playing the piano again. But this time, the melody was different. Lighter, brighter. She stepped in quietly, without warning. He didn't stop playing. And when the final note faded, he turned to her, with a look that said everything he hadn't yet found the courage to speak. "You brought sound back to this house," he whispered. Leah began to fill the empty spaces with flowers from the garden. The library, once thick with the scent of abandonment, now held new pages and quiet life. The silence that haunted the hallways was gradually replaced with voices, with laughter, with small acts of care. Alexander watched her from a distance, as if learning how to live all over again. And for the first time, she felt something she never expected to feel. She wanted to stay, not out of duty, not for money, but because, next to him, she was beginning to discover who she really was. But everything sweet eventually faces a test. And that test arrived one afternoon at the front door. Quite literally, a striking woman in a red coat appeared at the mansion's entrance. Dark hair, a practiced smile, calculating eyes. "Hello, Alexander. Did you miss me?" Leah watched from the staircase, and her blood turned to ice when she heard the name the woman spoke. Eleanor. Yes, the missing wife. Alive, and far more dangerous than Leah could have ever imagined. She claimed she had run away out of fear, that Alexander had been obsessive, controlling, manipulative. She said the house was a prison, that he had threatened her, and now, hearing of his new marriage, she had returned to save him from himself. Alexander didn't welcome her with warmth, nor with anger, only with silence. But Leah began to doubt. Had he been lying all along? Was Eleanor telling the truth? The doubt seeped in like poison. In the days that followed, Alexander avoided the subject completely. Eleanor, however, made herself at home in town and started spreading stories. She even approached Leah directly. He promised you 1 year too, didn't he? He's kind at first, until you find out what really keeps him locked inside that mansion. Leah was torn between what she saw and what she heard, because the Alexander she knew was distant, yes, but also gentle, deep, broken. But what if all of that was just part of the act? What if the monster was real? That night, she didn't join him for dinner, didn't visit the library or the garden. All she did was cry, alone in her room, because for the first time since entering that house, she wasn't sure if her heart had been right, or if she was being fooled like everyone else. What Eleanor had left hanging in the air tainted everything. Alexander said nothing, and Leah no longer trusted what she saw. She wanted to believe in him, but what if it was all a performance? Then, on a cloudy afternoon, the answer came, not from his lips, but from a place where the truth had been quietly waiting. While tidying up the old art studio, Leah found something wedged between the floorboards, an aged envelope sealed with brittle wax and marked with the initials, EW, inside a small key, and a note, "If doubt destroys you, truth rebuilds you. East Tower, second drawer." Her heart pounded. The door to the tower groaned as if it hadn't been opened in years. Curtains swayed with the wind, but the air was tense. She went straight to the vanity, second drawer. There they were, letters, dozens of them, handwritten, in dark ink and firm strokes, all signed by Eleanor Wolfe. The first spoke of longing, then came pain, and finally the masks fell. Fragments from the final letter. "You say you love me, but you lock me in this castle like I'm part of the furniture. One day, when I vanish, everyone will wonder what you did to me. You hide behind silence, Alexander, but the world will learn to see through it. No one can live beside a shadow. No one can love someone who doesn't know how to be light." It was emotional blackmail, precision-crafted manipulation, not words born from fear, but from someone who knew exactly how to destroy another from the inside out. That's when Alexander entered the tower and saw Leah sitting on the floor, letters in her hands. He didn't back away, didn't run from the pain. He simply asked, "Did you read them all?" She nodded, unable to speak. Alexander knelt, his eyes more human than she'd ever seen. "I loved her, and she broke me. She used to say my sadness was unbearable, that I killed joy just by existing. But even after all of it, I hid the truth, because even wounded, I still knew how to love." Leah wept in silence, because finally, everything made sense. Eleanor disappeared again. After a quiet investigation and anonymous reports of fraud and false allegations, she left town, without a trace. With her departure, the shadows vanished, and little by little, the mansion began to breathe again. Alexander started to change, and so did Leah. Distance turned into conversation, silence into music, and the contract into connection. On the last night of the year, Alexander asked Leah to meet him in the garden. He handed her an envelope. Inside were the divorce papers, signed, "You're free now, Leah." She looked at him and saw more than just a man. She saw a heart that had dared to love, even after being shattered. She took the papers and tore them without a second thought. "Now that I can choose, I choose you." That dinner in the garden was the first of many, with lights strung between the trees. with soft music drifting from the porch. And with two hearts that no longer needed to hide. Leah had once been sold like property, but she walked away from that chapter as the owner of her own story. Alexander had been buried by the weight of the past, but he was reborn through her love, and the castle that once held ghosts finally became a home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more narratives that move, inspire, and transform.